Welcome back to Potted Living, the show where we teach you how to grow all kinds of fruits and vegetables in pots on your balcony or other small space. And today, the long-awaited video, I'm going to show you how to properly overwinter your heritage red raspberry bush. I'm just going to move this here a little bit, make it a bit easier to see. Okay, so this is end of season. It is a very chilly December day. This plant is showing all the signs, everything's crisp, that it has gone dormant for the winter. Now remember, these plants appreciate chill hours. Those chill hours are when the soil is frozen. It gives the roots energy so that in the spring, they can push all that energy back up into the stalks that it's gonna grow and create fruit. Now, as many of you will know, this is an everbearing, meaning it has two crops. And then the caveat is, it can have two crops. It depends how you prune it. How you prune this bush is going to determine whether you have two crops next year or whether you have just one. Now, if you would like to have two crops, what you have is the cane. And without getting too technical about prima cane and flora cane, because those are just fun, fancy words, we're just going to talk about the cane that came up this year, which is the one that will still be remaining. And so this cane came up, grew some raspberries to about midway, and stopped, and has gone dormant now for the season. So these are the canes that began as little sprouts in spring. These are not last year's canes. These are all fresh and new for this year. So if you would like to have raspberries next year, what you do is you take the cane and you follow it from the top, okay? And you go down to the last spot where it sprouted raspberries, okay? Don't go any lower. And all you're gonna do, you're just gonna simply snip it at that spot, and you're going to leave the remaining stalk. And what's going to happen next year, it's going to sprout raspberries from here all the way down pretty close to the bottom. And that will occur somewhere around June. You'll get your first batch of raspberries. So again, to show you how we're going to do this one's easier to see. We go to the top here. We can see last year's raspberries, the leaves. And we go down. There we go. It was starting. So it may not sprout this high. That's okay, just to be safe. I'm gonna cut here, get rid of that, and we're gonna leave that cane. And again, this is gonna look like it's dead. Come spring, I can assure you, these canes are going to look absolutely dead. And all of a sudden, as the weather starts to warm up, they're gonna shed that outer bark. You're gonna see green poke through, and they're gonna come alive, and this dead looking plant is going to be in full fruit. Now, I've done this strategy in the past where I let it fruit on the two canes. I make it everbearing. The problem that I've found is the spring berries, they're just not that sweet. It hasn't had enough time, especially up here in Canada where our summers are a little bit shorter. I don't feel like that first cane's fruit on the bottom half really tastes all that good. And what's happening is now the plant is shooting up energy for the spring, using it up, and it doesn't even taste that good. And it doesn't have as much energy for the new canes that are now gonna grow from here, okay? So remember, you're gonna have your old canes still existing and new canes come up. So what I did last year is I cut these all the way down to the stem. And I'm talking like to the base. And I'm talking like base. Like you wanna get down into the soil and cut these things off. See, just like that. Ow, ow. Oh, this one has so many thorns. That hurt. Okay? Ow. So as you can see, all the way down into the soil. And that's okay. Obviously, there's a root system here. And as anybody who grows raspberries outside of pots knows, these things grow like a weed. It will send roots out in all different directions. And then they start springing up all over your garden. The joy of a pot is you're going to see that it is very contained. And obviously, you're going to get shoots coming up. Next spring, you want to trim down to probably your 6 or 8 strongest shoots that are going to come up. Let them come up, and that way the plant can dedicate all of its energy to those canes. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut back this entire heritage red raspberry all the way to the base. I'm going to get rid of basically the entire plant, and it's going to look like it doesn't exist. And if you go back to one of my videos from last year, you'll see what this looks like in the spring with just a ton of new green shoots coming up. And so if you go back to my original raspberry videos, you'll see what my strategy looks like when you get rid of all of the canes. So I'm gonna go through, clip out all of these raspberries, and we'll see what it looks like when we're done. So as you can see, I've clipped out all of the canes, and now I'm just looking for some of the roots, some of the base of the canes, clipping those down, because what we want to see is this grow fresh, and you don't need to worry about this little bit staying in your soil, because that's okay. It just becomes a little bit more of the mulch that's going to carry this through the winter. So I'm just looking for anywhere where it's sticking up. And there we go. That looks pretty clean. Pretty happy about that. Okay, sorry if my camera's a little wobbly. Trying to sort this out. Close to the base as we can. And then for overwintering, what we want to do, if you have a nice organic fertilizer, you can use that fertilizer on top. You can create a little bit of a top dressing underneath the leaves. A little bit of a top dressing here with some fertilizer. What that's going to do is get the plant super ready for next year. You always want to try to stay organic if you can, especially going into the spring. Boy, you want to use gloves when you deal with raspberries because they are prickly. And put some mulch on top. And then the real key here is make sure it stays watered. Ice cold water. Ice cold water. Keep your plant watered throughout the winter. The last thing you want is the soil to dry out. Even though the plant is dormant, if the soil dries out, there's a very good chance that it could die. So you want a nice solid block. You can pick it up, feel if it's a nice heavy block, which this is. It's nice and frozen, and it's ready to go. And so again, look at my video from a couple of years ago. You'll see this starting with fresh sprouts and growing through the season. And that, my friends, is how you overwinter your heritage red raspberry plant. Any questions, comments, please hit me up in the comments section. Happy to help, and happy gardening.